Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and today I am bringing you another finished jewelry update to show you some of the things I've been up to over the past month or two using the contents from my stash and also the many bead boxes that I share here on a regular basis. In this installment, I'll have some pieces from the last couple of bargain bead boxes, as well as the January Potomac Beads Treasure Edition, the Beads to Live By subscriptions, they're seed beads and 2-hole beads, as well as some bead weaving projects, some of which have already come out in tutorials recently. By doing these updates, I love to tell you a little bit about the creation of the pieces that I show you. I'll try to identify where certain beads came from and give you a little glimpse into my thought process as I was in the midst of creating, and hopefully by doing that it will inspire you to play around with some of the things that you already have on hand, or spur some other ideas from something you see here, or just enjoy seeing how these bead box contents have transformed into a finished product. There's so much creativity out there, and it's great that we can all come up with these different things, even if we're subscribing to the same boxes. And I think that's another fun aspect of getting these subscriptions, because you can see what others have created with the same contents if they're shared here on YouTube or other forms of social media. And I think it helps to not only unbox the packages and show you the beads, but actually show them when they're being used as much as possible, because there's just so many possibilities out there. And what you'll see here today just barely scratches the surface of that. So, starting out, we have a necklace set with a coordinating bracelet and earrings, which I created from the contents of the December bargain bead box subscription. And I did give you a peek at this set in the January unboxing, but I realized that not everyone watches every single unboxing video. So if you missed that one, I wanted to give you another opportunity to see that set here as well. So this is one that included a lot of these reddish brown tones with those jasper stones and copper metallic findings. And while not everything that you see here came from that subscription box, that's where the inspiration came from and a lot of the materials that make up this set. The pendant that you see that I included in the front of the necklace is actually something that I picked up from their sister store, which is Beadbox Bargains. And the bail that I'm using to pull that together is actually from one of the past Potomac Beads boxes. In addition to that, those light colored stone beads that I used, which I chose to break up some of those more reddish tones in the copper, those actually came from a past curated bead box. So you can see that I do mix a lot of different things together, not just sticking with all of the same package contents each and every time. Also in this necklace set, the metallic bead caps and the crystal bicones, those came from Beadbox Bargains as well. And those check glass table cut beads, the squares that you see, those are actually, I believe, from a past Sam's bead box. Don't want to forget to mention those. They combined the red glass and the copper tone so beautifully. And I like how the squares break up all of those round beads just a little bit and give the pieces just a little bit more dimension. Since I had additional beads left over, I decided to make the coordinating bracelet and earrings. And here's a closer look at the bracelet. At the back of that, or the clasp area, I just added a little piece of chain as an extender. And I found these two really sweet, tiny little leaf charms in my stash and decided to add a couple of those dangling off to give that another final touch. And then at the back of the necklace, off of the extender chain, I added another one of those tabular square beads as well, giving the extender back there just another element of detail, which is something I like to do, which I'll sometimes use beads back there that I used actually in the set, but also it's a great way to use up your bead soup. If you have a container of odds and ends and you have something else that coordinates, you can add that as a finishing touch on an extender chain. Up next is another simple one-strand necklace that I made from the contents of the January bargain bead box. That one had sort of a night sky theme and a totally different, much cooler color palette with the tones of gray, silver, and blue. And at the front of this necklace, that's where you can see that I used those laser-etched cylinder beads with that star-shaped pattern that comes through, breaking up the electroplated blue tone And I also pulled in the labradorite chips and added those in groups of 3 in between some of the other beads to break them up and to add a little bit of additional texture to the necklace. I also used some of those little metallic silver star spacer beads in between some of these groups. And then I used some of the blue colored seed beads back here as smaller spacers in between some of those sections. And those actually came from the December Beads to Live by seed bead subscription. So there you can see going back towards the back of the necklace and just how beautiful that labradorite is, with those flashes of blue that you see in certain areas of those stones. At the back of the necklace, I used some of the labradorite smaller faceted rounds to finish that up and to just graduate the sizes, getting smaller towards the back. And then there's a peek at the extender and the little star spacer bead I used back there as a decoration. Now, this memory wire bracelet didn't come from the contents of the bargain bead box, but it did come from a curated bead box from a couple months ago, and I shared this bracelet in one of those unboxings. But again, if you missed that one, I wanted to be sure to share it in a finished jewelry update since it hadn't made it into one. And in those curated boxes, you always find a selection of color coordinated beads for the month that are typically glass rounds. And they're also in different sizes, so they make for something that you can easily combine together in a memory wire bracelet. Also showing you that because those boxes come with a finding starter kit every month, which always includes a coil of memory wire. So these are all beads that came from that subscription, and I just pulled some of those little silver spacers that I had from my stash. This next necklace and earring set came from the contents of the recent Potomac Beads Treasure Edition of their box, which is their subscription relaunch. This one didn't come with the patterns, but it came with a number of strands, bags of beads, and some findings. And the only beads that didn't come from that specific box are the seed beads that I used, and I used some silver-toned findings that I had on hand instead of the antique copper pieces that were provided in that particular package. So I'm going to show you this earring up close because it's going to give you an idea of how I went about coming up with this leafy necklace, and you'll be able to see those sections much better in this way. So basically, I thought I was being pretty clever. I haven't seen these used in this particular way. I'm talking about the 2-hole Ava beads in that blue color. But they made for a great way to showcase these leaf beads, which can be a challenge to work with, especially the ones that have the holes that are drilled up there going through the face of the leaf instead of through the side. So by putting them together this way with some seed beads, it just situates and orients those leaves so that they're facing out. And I made a number of these separately, just like you see here attached to the bottom of the earring. And then I essentially used these as beaded beads and strung them on the bead stringing wire. And that wire was provided in this particular subscription box as well. It was the new Potomac's brand beading wire, which worked great. And I ended up passing that right underneath the seed bead section in that gap there to string those on the necklace. So that's what each of those leafy sections are. And once again, I made all of those separately. And then just like other beaded beads, I just added those to the wire and added also some of those larger fire polish rounds that they provided in between each of them to space them out and break them up a little bit, along with some of those seed beads, which act as spacer beads too. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with the 2-hole beads because they were all different colors. It was more of a sampler mix. So of course you could make a pair of earrings and just use maybe 2 of the same color. But I think it's a really pretty palette all together with the blues, greens, gold, bronze. So I decided to just mix them all up and use all the colors together in a single necklace. And then I brought some of the Potomac brand pearls in that smaller size up into the necklace towards the back of that as well, which also kind of ties in with some of those blues and greens. So I'm really happy with how this one came out, and I also like the fact that those leaves, the way that they're each beaded separately, they're going to all hang in the same direction and not flip around since they are held in place really securely, but yet you also get that more organic feeling of movement because they kind of act like a little bit of fringe. And I just alternated the direction that those leaves were going, changing up every other one. So I'm going to do my best to create a tutorial for this necklace. Even if you didn't get that particular box, a lot of us have those types of leaves in our stash or some other type of bead with a hole that is positioned that way. So it might be a new concept for you if you've been looking for another way to use something like that. Up next are 3 new pieces I made from the January Beads to Live by seed bead and 2-hole bead subscriptions. Starting with this very simple bracelet, which incorporates 2 of the colors of the 11-0 seed beads that they provided, as well as those 2-hole stud beads from their new 2-hole bead subscription, just surrounding each of those with a square of seed beads, which creates that fun dimensional beaded bracelet that you see here. This bracelet design, by the way, this is called the Rula Regalia bracelet, and I do have a tutorial already for that one. I can't remember if I shared that already in a finished jewelry update, but I wanted to mention that in case anybody is seeing that one and wondering what that's called or where it came from. Next up is a floral shaped pendant that I created from the 2-hole dagger beads, more of those turquoise stud beads, and some of the pink seed beads that came from their subscription as well. This is just something I came up with playing around. I initially tried using 1 stud bead as the center of a flower, but it wasn't holding up as well as I liked, so I decided to go with a cluster of 5 and start there, which added a little bit more stability to this pendant. And there's a look at the back if you're curious as to what that looks like and how that all came together. I do have a couple of dagger bead floral-like design tutorial videos, just not one specifically for this. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what those dagger beads look like now that they're used in a finished piece. And then this was just a fun new bracelet design that I came up with using the 2-hole silky beads that are so pretty in those different metallic tones, a lot of pink and purple. Those seed beads also coming from this month's subscription package in the 2 different colors. And then the fire polish beads that you see there are just ones that I had in my stash, and I really liked that pinkish purple plum color along with these other tones. So I may drop a tutorial for this one in the future as well. We'll just have to see. I think I want to tweak it just a little bit more. But overall, I'm really happy with the concept and how this one came out. And then we'll just finish up with the pieces that I shared in recent tutorials, which are also newer designs I haven't yet shared in one of these updates. And I guess I'll just go from left to right. And I'll start out with this pendant necklace, which is a design that I created based on the Lucia's Light themed Beading School Academy subscription with all these beautiful crystals and preciosa nacre pearls and that beautiful cabochon in the center. And what's unique about this bezel is it's actually incorporating the sew-on crystals that came in that package, which have that little crisscross section in the back that you can use to attach to bead weaving projects like this one, for example. So if you'd like to see how I made this one, which is something more unique because of those sew-on crystals, you can see that in the tutorial. Also brought in some of the smaller deep red 3mm crystal bicones, not only in the outside of the bezel, but also brought those up here as well and breaking up some of those peach pearl beads. And then of course the gold seed beads and some 2mm fire polish to cinch up that pendant as well. And in here I just have one of those 8mm gorgeous preciosa chatons, pulling that all together. So I do show you how to make the entire pendant in that tutorial, just not the necklace portion. But I'll go into a little bit more detail about the necklace. Once I had the pendant made, I then started working on these 2 sections of prismatic right angle weave ropes. And this is done using the 5 bead technique in the little tiny 15-0s. So it does take some patience and probably some glasses as well to complete these. but it was worth it. I really like how this finishes off the necklace. And you can find a tutorial for this particular type of rope back in my archives if you just type in PRAW, and it'll explain how exactly you can make that with not just seed beads, but other types of beads as well. And once those sections were made, I then strung everything together, or sewed everything together really, with some additional fire line. And I used these beads here to bridge the section between the rope and the actual pendant itself, and sewed back and forth multiple times to really strengthen those sections and tighten them up. Just connecting this segment of beads with some additional smaller arms of seed beads that connect to either side of that pendant. And I just looped back and forth through the ropes a little bit, sewing back through these seed beads down here in different directions to really strengthen that up. And that's how that all came together. I also hadn't shown you the back of this necklace because I actually hadn't completed it quite yet, so I can show it to you now. I used some of these cylindrical cord ends and basically glued the seed bead rope into those cord ends and gave them ample time to dry. So it fits that rope perfectly, and then there is a little petal bead that matches the color scheme. I found that in my bead soup container, that just adding a little decoration to the back. Up next are the cozy crescent bracelets. You can check my recent videos for this tutorial, which started out with this particular color scheme. That one came from the Cozy Winter Eureka Crystal Beads collection, which included those shimmery white crescent beads with the 2 holes, as well as the different sizes of seed beads, and those light tan colored fire polish beads with that luster coating. Of course, I like to make these different designs in all sorts of different color combinations, so that's what inspired these other 3. I just wanted to play around with some other beads I had in my stash in different combinations to give you an idea of what this design would look like, not only in the neutral tones, but also in some of these other colors as well. Up next, I have 6 different color combinations of the Terrace Gem Duo pendants. Here are 2 of them up close. And this is a design that originally came out from the Moonlit Terrace box that I helped put together with Beading School last year. And I had shared a very similar pendant. I just tweaked the design a little bit more to where I liked it even better and was ready to come out with a tutorial for that, which I shared recently, and you can find just a few videos back. It's a pretty simple 2-hole bead design to put together if you have some of those Gem Duo beads on hand, and also some 15-0 seed beads, as well as some 3mm fire polish and 3mm bicones. This is one of those designs where you can take this and make all sorts of different things with it. We start out by making the larger component, and then we add this smaller section to the top of it, but you could make multiple larger components and link those together to make a coordinating bracelet or earrings or all sorts of different things. That's the handy thing about these beaded components, because they're so versatile. And it's just got a little loop up there. That's where this could be added to a jump ring and some type of stringing material. Next is a design also inspired by Beading School. This one from their winter box, I think that was called Sparkly Winter Night, and it incorporated all of the beads and crystals that you see in this particular combination on the right-hand side, which includes that gorgeous 18mm cushion cut crystal. And we start out in that tutorial that you can find already by making the bezel for this stone out of the 15-0 seed beads, 11-0 delicas. We've got some 3mm crystal bicones and the 2-hole Tila beads, of course. And then here's a look at the back. It's got a lot of great structure to it and is very secure, fits those 18mm cushion cut crystals just perfectly, I think. So in that video, after we make the larger component, I show you how to bezel these smaller crystals. These were actually the 7mm flat back crystals that came in that package. And we just made a simple seed bead bezel for 2 of those. And then I added this really slinky 2-hole Tila bead rope on either side of those pieces to finish off the necklace. And this would actually make a really great bracelet even on its own. So if you just want to do something like that, you can check out the later portion of that tutorial video and make yourself a fun half Tila bead bracelet. And then lastly, I have two necklaces on the bottom right, and those were inspired by the December Beads of the Month Club in the hot and trendy variety. And you can find this tutorial video as well. It's called the bow tie bead collar necklace because of course it uses those 3-hole bow tie beads which came in that subscription package, as well as 3 other items that came together with those, like these smaller daggers, the 3-hole Arcos Parpuca beads with that really interesting copper and silver splash over top of the blue, and the top drilled 6mm beads that you can see dotted here in between the sections. So this design came together really nicely and has a curved shape already, which makes it perfect for a necklace. And then I just added a segment of chain on either side to make it to the length that I wanted, with just beading the front portion, which also saves a little bit of money, and bead supplies if you just use chain or another stringing material to finish up the back. Sometimes you can get away with that. And it also incorporates 3 different sizes of seed beads, those I had already had in my stash. And then here's a look at the other color combination I put together with things I already had in my stash, like those light pink colored dagger beads, the Arcos, and those deeper berry colored bow tie beads. And I wanted to do this one with some bicones in place of the top drilled rounds because I realized those top drilled rounds are kind of a much more specific shape, as are a lot of these, of course. But it's nice to offer different alternatives for some of these materials on the list. So that just to show that you can absolutely use the 4mm size rounds or bicones or anything in that size in place of those top drilled rounds if you don't have those. And that wraps it up for another finished jewelry update. I want to thank you all so much for being here. For those of you who have been around here forever or are brand new, I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. And as usual, I really hope this video provides you with a little bit of inspiration, at least. And if nothing else, you just were able to enjoy some of these beads along with me as a fun and positive outlet. Be sure to leave me a comment down below, especially if there's something here in particular you like or anything else you'd like to say. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you'll be notified when I'm posting future unboxings, tutorials, and future finished jewelry updates just like this one. And also, if you're newer here, I have a playlist where I've shared tons of these finished jewelry updates going back almost 5 years. So you can check out so many more finished pieces just in that playlist alone. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a big thumbs up and also feel free to share it with your other beading friends. That's all I have for now. I look forward to seeing you again though real soon. And until next time, I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.